From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Venezuela marked Youth Day with a show of civic-military alliance at the border state of Táchira. This despite threats of disruption by some of the country's right wing. The opposition continues its attempts to bring the so-called humanitarian aid from Colombia without government consent. They are using the aid trucks stationed at the border as fuel in an attempt to keep its right-wing base mobilized. Venezuelan troops say the continued civic-military presence on the bridge symbolizes a joint resistance to any coup attempt.
Our brothers of the whole world who listen to us, we are an independent and sovereign nation, and for this purpose we have here our militia, prepared and trained to defend our beloved homeland, Venezuela. Chavez lives, always loyal, traitors never.
Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has made a call once again for peace and dialogue in the country. During his speech for Youth Day celebrations at the Bolivar Square in Caracas, Maduro took a stand against military threats. He also denounced the imperialist intervention promoted by this U.S. administration.
We all want peace for Venezuela. We want the war drums to go away, the threats of a military invasion to go away, and that all Venezuela unites in a single voice. We want peace.
Juan Guaido is calling for a fatal war because it is a war against all the people of Venezuela, not only against the presidents of the Republic, it is against all the people of Venezuela.
And young Chavistas marked the day with a march in defense of democracy. The event marked 205 years since the Battle of La Victoria in the Venezuelan War of Independence. The holiday honors the young students who fought in this battle. Cuba's government has blasted a conference by the Organization of American States on the newly proposed Cuban constitution. An official from the foreign ministry called it, quote, a ridiculous anti-Cuban spectacle. He said Cuba does not recognize the OAS nor its officials.
The
Secretary General of the Organization of American States, following the orders of the U.S. government, organized an alleged conference at the OAS headquarters in Washington this afternoon that turned into a ridiculous anti-Cuban spectacle.
China's government has said that reports that diplomats held talks with Venezuela's opposition are false. This comes after the Wall Street Journal claimed the diplomats were concerned about oil projects in Venezuela.
In fact, the report is false. It's fake news. Recently, some media have been concocting some false information, and we don't know what their agenda is. We hope the relevant media can do news reporting based on objective and fair principles. In terms of recent Venezuela issue, we maintain that it should be resolved by a dialogue to seek a political solution.
Thousands of Nicaraguans have signed a petition of solidarity with the Venezuelan government at the National Palace of Culture. People show their support for Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro and his government. They also strongly rejected the intervention of the United States and their allies in Venezuelan affairs. Venezuela's ambassador to Nicaragua, Javier Arroyo, said that the Trump administration is only after his country's natural resources and oil reserves. He also said that the U.S. blockade has taken away more than $35 billion from Venezuela.
Today, we Nicaraguans show our solidarity, our firm convictions that we will overcome these threats together with Venezuela. The same way we survived an indirect intervention of the United States in the 80s. You see, we have already felt a similar threat on our own flesh, and that's why today, and always, we will show our solidarity with the Venezuelan people.
During an interview with the Real News Network, actor and activist Danny Glover criticized the U.S. over its actions against Venezuela. Glover singled out the so-called humanitarian aid.
Now what you've done is you've taken the billions of dollars that rightfully belong to the Venezuelan people, and what you've done is you've taken those billions of dollars, you place sanctions on it. They can't use their own money, their own resources, and then you come with as like this this armor, that knight in shining armor to save them and everything, with a few $1 million of quote-unquote humanitarian aid, which we don't know where that money goes to. The danger that we have now and the danger that we see is a full-scale conflict which will just decimate not simply, people's, but simply the gains that were made by this action called the Bolivarian Revolution over the last 20 years. This is the attempt to kill that is what is on the table and had always been on the table.
South Africa's largest trade union has staged a national strike to protest against high unemployment. Thousands of workers marched through the streets to decry government economic policies that have failed to create jobs and are deepening poverty. South Africa's unemployment rate is around 27%. The country has also been dealing with rolling power outage due to the electricity cuts by the state power utility Eskom. Let's hear from our correspondent Matuba Matlachi, who has more.
Members of the Congress for South Africa's trade unions are gathering here in Johannesburg at what is called the Mary Fitzgerald Square. We're expecting hundreds and hundreds of their members who have not gone to work today. So members affiliated to this trade union will not be showing up for work today, which is expected to also cause a disruption. The reason behind the demonstration or the protests here by COSATU is to tell government we want more jobs, because unemployment in South Africa accounts to about 27%. So 27% of the population, high amongst them is the youth, are jobless, and the Congress for South Africa's trade union is asking government to create more jobs, and this is the reason behind this protest that you see behind us. So in all nine South Africa's provinces, there will be protests like this. So we are now in Gauteng province, which is expected to be the main event of today's protest against government's lack or slow process of creating new jobs for South Africans, most of them young South Africans. It's back to you, studio.
That was Madua Matlaji from Johannesburg. And he also spoke with one of the leaders of the Congress of the South African trade unions.
27% is unemployed and 38% extended definition of unemployment are jobless. 10.7 million of young workers between 15 and 30 years are unemployed. 9.7 million economically active people are unemployed. Yet government and business have taken a short left on what we said in terms of retrenchment, moratorium on retrenchment.
We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. In Haiti, around 78 inmates have escaped from a prison in the southern part of the country, and another person has been killed during anti-government protests. They used the commotion from the protests outside the prison to escape. Protesters have been rallying against the economic situation and corruption in the country, demanding the president resigns.
Restez mobilisés,
We have to keep mobilizing until Jovenel Moïse and Jean-Henri Séant leave, and they should both go to jail. They are two criminal politicians that have the project of destroying the country.
Wildfires are approaching a residential area in the Chilean city of San Pedro de la Paz. Some residents have voluntarily evacuated from their homes as they fear the blaze will advance to their properties. At the same time, firefighters are trying to control the multiple fires in the southern Biobío region. Also in Chile, thousands of cuttlefish have washed up on the shore in the north of the country. Authorities are still investigating the cause, but warn people not to eat the fish. Locals fear this is due to pollution and could damage the region's fishing industry. In 2018, various sea creatures, including whales, squid, and salmon, washed up at various beaches across the country. The former president of Panama, Ricardo Martinelli, is still awaiting his trial for spying. The process has created controversy about the inefficiency of the judicial system when judging people in power.
Recently, a court denied Ricardo Martinelli a bail that would have allowed him to leave prison. However, Panamanians are still waiting for a trial against him to start.
What we're seeing in the Martinelli case is that he's being judged for spying, but not for stealing from the state. He's not being judged for using his power as a way to appropriate resources both legally and illegally. It's as if there's absolute impunity.
The former president is being judged for using $13.4 million to buy spying equipment in order to spy on more than 150 people opposed to his government. However, he has also been investigated, but not gone to trial, for money laundering, such as in the purchase of a grain overpriced by $12.3 million and renting a property with a price inflated by $10.1 million.
There is a relationship between the media and a judicial structure which has been strongly condemned due to what the judicial system itself has admitted, that the court closes cases and results can be both.
The Supreme Court passed his case to an ordinary court, saying there was a lack of jurisdiction. And so the Panamanian people's faith in justice dropped.
There has not been the slightest effort to make any of the reforms that the Panamanian judicial system needs. If lawmakers keep naming judges, there will never be any reform.
If Martinelli is not found guilty, he will be able to participate in the general elections taking place in May 2019. He will be chosen as a member of parliament or mayor of the capital, something that will evidence the fragility of the Panama's institutional framework.
Scientists are still scouring through the remains of Brazil's National Museum, which was destroyed by a fire last September. Their goal is to recover ancient artifacts and to hopefully hold some exhibitions with the remains. Around 20 million historical artifacts were burned in the fire. Its destruction led to criticism over the lack of public funds to protect the country's heritage.
Here you can see a series of cabinets that store scientific pieces, scientific samples. A part of this material was destroyed, but as you can see there are drawers that have been dated, and we are finding important scientific pieces that can be recovered for our collections.
The first of 15 consultations on a draft bill for gender equality for the Caribbean community has begun in Antigua. Priority areas include equality, social inclusion, freedom from violence, access to health services, and education. Delegates will also give recommendations to advance on this strategy. The IMF's Deputy Managing Director has met with Dominica's Prime Minister. The IMF official has also visited hurricane-affected areas on the island. In 2017, Dominica was devastated by Hurricane Maria, which caused billions of dollars in damages. Both parties discussed how the IMF will partner with Caribbean countries to find ways to avoid the failure of banking relationships. In other news, Cuba is home to the only cinematheque of the Caribbean. It stands to preserve the long-standing legacy of Cuban film. It was founded 59 years ago and ever since maintained an archive of Cuba's contributions to the world of film.
Movies, documentaries, newsreels and special moments from Cuban history are all inside these film canisters. This is the archive of the Cuban Institute of Art and Cinematography. Jose Pina has been working here for 40 years.
Films are constantly restored, cleaned and aired out in a special workshop. This is what we mean by conservation, because if we don't take care of the film stock, it will start to accumulate acid.
The majority of the movies in this archive were shot with this camera, which is now being preserved as a treasure in the museum.
The great Cuban films were shot with this camera, including Cecilia and Madagascar, an endless array of films. This was at the heart of them. It's like a child or a grandchild.
But for experts, Cuba's Cinematique is not just a shop full of old parts, it's a place for people to interact with the country's rich film history. They now work to restore old classics to screen digitally.
There are two classics made by Titon, and they are being restored in the United States. They are Death of a Bureaucrat and The Last Supper. We expect them to be finished before the 41st International Festival of New Latin American Cinema, to be shown there.
One thing that makes Cuba's Cinematique stand out is its ongoing exhibition of Latin American and Caribbean films.
We are always showing Latin American movies. We have film clubs. The Brazil Film Club, the Tango Feroz Film Club, which focuses on Argentine cinema. We have also finished cycles of Mexican film and Panamanian film. We continuously promote the region's cinema, independently from the Latin American film festivals we hold.
Cuba Cinematique was born in 1960, a year after the Cuban Institute of Art and Cinematography was created. It was one of the first cultural institutions born out of the revolution. These two bodies work closely in preserving and distributing Cuban film. They believe in the words of Cuban filmmaker Julio Garcia Espinosa, who said, "A nation without pictures is a nation that does not exist."
And as Valentine's Day approaches, Ecuadorian rose farms are preparing to take the market by storm. This Valentine's Day, around 17,000 tons of roses were sold to Ecuador's regular customers, the United States, Canada, Russia and China. Ecuador is the third largest exporter in the world after the Netherlands and Colombia.
The rose was considered to be deformed, but we've discovered unique characteristics. Sometimes they have the form of a heart or different shapes develop in the middle of the rose, so they've become very appealing.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Spanish parliament has rejected the government's budget, a move that will likely lead Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez to call for snap general elections. Sánchez holds a minority government and has relied on the support of Catalan nationalist parties against right-wing parties. But Catalan independence members have also rejected his budget. If called, the early elections would likely take place in mid-April. Public transport has come to a major halt in Belgium, with airports and major railways closing down for Wednesday for a national strike. Brussels Airlines canceled all 222 of its scheduled flights, while the National Railway Company said half of its nationwide trains will be cancelled as well. The strike comes as a meeting of NATO ministers is set to take place in the city. Unions are demanding higher wages, pressuring the government ahead of the general elections in May. A car bomb exploded at a checkpoint in the Syrian town of Al-Rai near the Turkish border. 3 policemen and 4 civilians were injured. The town of Al-Rai is an area controlled by Turkey-backed rebels. It was seized from the Islamic State group in an operation in 2016. Cameroon's opposition leader Maurice Kamto has been charged with rebellion and insurrection, among other offenses that could carry a death penalty. The prosecutor's office of a military court filed the charges against Kamto and 28 of his supporters. He was arrested on late January for organizing a small rally.
I call on the incumbent president of the Republic to organize the conditions for a peaceful transition of power in order to protect Cameroon from a post-electoral crisis that our country does not need.
The main opposition party in Nigeria has held a campaign rally in Lagos. Presidential candidate for the People's Democratic Party, Atiku Abubakar, and his running mate, Peter Obi, led the event. Nigeria will hold general elections this Saturday.
I am going to respect the institutions of our Constitution. I will work with the National Assembly. I will protect the judiciary, and I will respect the rule of law.
As a new government takes office in the Democratic Republic of Congo, farmers hope that their grievances can be finally resolved.
Elders from Baoba still remember what the whites and the government promised back in the 60s in exchange for their lands. They wanted to build the Inga hydroelectric dam. They were promised homes, a school and a hospital that would have improved their quality of life, as well as access to electricity and tractors. But these proved to be empty promises. To this day, they don't even have a light bulb.
People are suffering. First of all, we need them to deliver everything they promised. We gave up our lands because of what they promised, so they owe us. If they were good people, they would pay us back. Our ancestors are gone, but we are still suffering from their abuse.
Those who work for foreign construction companies didn't receive any benefits either, like Mwanda Mwaka, who tells us there's been no positive change in her village.
Finding food is hard, finding water and medicine as well. We have not seen any improvements in all these years.
When they came to build the second channel, they didn't even respect Congolese workers. They never had them sign a work contract.
They paid us 150,000 Congolese francs a month.
You benefit from my labor, but ignore I have a whole family to feed. We are not against anyone in particular. We just want our dignity back. Don't use me. Make me sign a contract.
They continue to demand that the government lives up to its responsibilities.
A Japanese lesbian couple is demanding the right to get married. Shizuka Oe and Yoko Ogawa have been together for 25 years, and they are aware that the marriage registration they filled in Tokyo's town hall will be rejected. So along with other 12 gay couples, they will file lawsuits on Valentine's Day. They say the non-recognition of same-sex marriage is unconstitutional.
I have always felt some exasperation to the fact that lesbians and gays don't have the freedom to choose to get married or not.
I want to loudly say again in this country that love, equality, and freedom are an integral part of human rights.
Construction is still ongoing for the 2020 Olympic Games in Tokyo, as a new national stadium is set for completion in November of this year. A total of $1.3 billion was spent on the massive grounds located in Shinjuku. The last time the Japanese held the Olympic Games was back in 1964. It is hoped that the new national stadium could eventually be converted into a football stadium. For our last story, Telesur has released a song as part of an international campaign called Tambores de la Paz para Venezuela, Drums of Peace. The video is a message of solidarity and against war in Venezuela and the rest of the world. It was created by Cuban songwriter Raúl Torres and other talented musicians from the region.
Suenen los ángeles de la tierra, los tambores de la paz. Quemen los tambores de la guerra para que no suenen más, para que no suenen.
Alúmbrame cielo, haz que me valga la pena el desvelo. Suelo, regálame miles de brotes, que las ideas nunca se derroten. Cúbreme azul, sin tanta metralla, entre razón, fuera batalla.
With that, we come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories from our website at telesurenglish.net. And we're on social media as well, so go ahead and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.